Thanks for checking out Church Experience Online. If you would like to learn more, get connected, or help fuel the movement by giving, click on the appropriate links on the website.
Brother got married earlier this year, and we were on our way back home here to Florida, and we had a connection going through Chicago O'Hare Airport. And as we were landing, the flight attendant came on through the speaker system and said, "For those of you who are home, welcome home. For those of you who are here for business or pleasure, enjoy your stay." And that got my mind turning a little bit, that little comment, because it asked some good questions. You know, for you and I here where we live, not geographically, but here on this planet, this life that God's given us, are we here as our home? And I think those of us who are followers of Jesus, we would say, no, this is not our home. We would say that this is not our long-term residence. On the outside end, if God gives us a good 80, 100 years, that'd be awesome. And we'd be really grateful for that, but that's not all there is, so this is not home. This is our temporary residence. So that part's settled, but what about the other question? I think it's a really good question. So are we here then, this place that's not our long-term home, are we here for business or pleasure? Have you ever thought about that? Are we here for business or pleasure? Like, what's the purpose of my life here? Well, I think there's a story in the book of Acts that really answers that question well, and it gets some good dialogue going. And so we're going to take a look at it in Acts chapter 14. Acts chapter 14, verse 8. I'm going to go ahead and start reading this story. It's about a couple guys who were following Jesus. They were living for Him. They're on this thrill ride adventure following Jesus. And you and I are learning, I think, in this series what it looks like to really follow Him and how incredible that can be. Although there's significant valleys that you have to go through, there's also amazing mountaintops. And these guys, they get to experience some pretty incredible stuff. God allowed them to participate in some divine and miraculous things. And that's what we're going to jump into this morning in Acts chapter 14, beginning in verse 8. It says, "In Lystra there sat a man who was lame. He had been that way from birth and had never walked. He listened to Paul as he was speaking." Now, Paul, we talked about him last week. If you remember, his life was completely and forever changed by this Jesus. It says, as he listened to Paul as he was speaking, and Paul looked directly at him, this lame man. He saw that he had faith to be healed, and he called out, "Stand up on your feet." At that, the man jumped up and began to walk. So the lame man who couldn't walk, through a miraculous event that Jesus chose to do through Paul, this guy got up and began to walk. Now in verse 11 it says, "When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in their Lycaonian language, 'The gods have come down to us in human form.' Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes because he was the chief speaker. The priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bulls and wreaths to the city gates because he and the crowd wanted to offer sacrifices to them. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of this, they tore their clothes and they rushed out into the crowd, shouting, 'Friends, why are you doing this? We too are only human like you. We are bringing you good news, telling you to turn from those worthless things to the living God, who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything in them.'" All right, let's stop there. Paul and Barnabas had the humility and the wisdom to know who was really on the throne. God had worked through them to do some incredible stuff. And when you're on a thrill ride with God, you're going to see some amazing things happen in your life. You're going to see some amazing blessings pour into your life, some great results that come from following God. And when you see those things happen in your life, it's really important that you know who's on the throne. And Paul and Barnabas had the humility at this moment to know who was on the throne. And in your notes on the back of your weekly, there's some really important stuff I'd love for you to write down if you'd like to do that. One is this, is that we're called onto mission, but we naturally drift toward being the mission. We're called onto mission. And following Jesus and living for Him in our culture, we are called to be on mission for Him like Paul and Barnabas were. They were on mission. All these early disciples that we've been reading about, these early followers of Jesus, they were on mission. But we naturally tend to drift towards being the mission. Like, we want to be the mission ourselves. In our flesh and our natural humanity, we want to live like it's all about us. But as we mature and we realize that it's not about us, we have to recognize that it's about someone else. It's about our King, and it's about His kingdom. Yet I think you and I would really prefer that everything was really all about us. That everything was for our convenience and that we could just do whatever we feel like doing.
I rented a car a couple weeks ago in Los Angeles, had the car for a few days, and then when I went home, I had to drop the car at the rental place. You know, you got to go to the rental place that's off the airport, give them the car, give them your thing with the mileage, you got to get on a bus, and then go to your terminal and check in. I was late, and I was worried about missing my flight, so I knew I had no time to do any of that. So I never did this before, I just drove my car right to the terminal, and just left it there. And I got on the plane. And once I was on the plane and I had a little moment, I called Hertz and I said, hey, listen, your car is sitting out in front of Terminal 4 and the keys are in it. So that's where it is. And the guy was like, you can't do that. You have to return it to this location and then get, and I go, well, I didn't do that already. And now I'm leaving California. So if you want your car, you need to go to that place where it is. And he was like, oh man, all right, we'll get it. And that was the end of it. And I realized I could do this every time. Every time I rent a car, because of course they want you to do all that. But if you don't, they still want the car back. They're gonna send a dude. You could drive a car till you don't want it, just get out of it while it's moving and just walk away. Well, I don't feel like being in that car any longer. Just call Hertz, hi, your car is drifting into the intersection of 28th and Broadway. If you're interested, it's now your problem.
You know, that's how we want to live, right? Like, it's about us and we can do whatever we feel like doing, that we're on the throne of life, that it kind of revolves around us. And when we forget that we're on mission and that we're not the mission, when we forget that and we become the mission and we live for ourselves, man, life really starts to break down. But on the other hand, if we can remember like Paul and Barnabas did, in those important moments of life, who really is on the throne, who really is the king, and that God can do some incredible stuff through us. He's really freed up in a more significant way to work through our lives when we recognize, when we can kneel and recognize who the king is. And you look and see some of the amazing things that happened. Turn a couple pages in the book of Acts, and chapter 11, verse 24, you see Barnabas, one of these guys, kind of summarizes his life. It says that he was a good man, full of the Holy Spirit and faith, and a great number of people were brought to the Lord. So that's the kind of impact that can come from someone whose life is submitted to God and who's not caught up in the lie that they're the mission, but instead that they're on mission. And I look in Acts chapter 13, verse 49, and it talks about the broad impact of these lives, these early believers who were on mission. And it says, the word of the Lord spread through the whole region. Spread through the whole region. And that's my prayer for this region, here in the Tampa Bay area, that God would do some incredible stuff, that we get to be in on that we get to be a part of God changing lives. Man, that's awesome. And they were caught up in the mission. They were not the mission, but you and I prefer, instead of being missionaries, we prefer to be the mission. Because honestly, that's easier if we're the mission. And we have to recognize, though, who owns it all. Whose we are, and, our time, our lives, our stuff, our energy, our abilities, all that's God's. And when we do that, when we recognize whose we are and whose this life is and who it's about, again, God's just freed up to work through us in a special way. For example, our time. When I recognize that it's not my time for me to do whatever I want with, it's God's time that He's given me this window of time to be on mission for Him. When I recognize that, then I can be on God's agenda. So I can say, all right, God, today is yours. Thank you for it. What would you like me to do today? And I'm open to the interruptions that might not have been in my plans, or to serving and helping in ways that might not benefit me. And it changes our whole perspective because we realize there's opportunity all around us. There's need all around us. Jesus talked about this in Matthew chapter 9, verse 36. It says, when Jesus saw the crowds, He had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then they said to His disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into the harvest field. So Jesus says, man, the harvest is ready. I mean, there is needs all around, and there's people who are ready to give over their lives or their heart to be ministered to serve, to follow Jesus, but more workers are needed. More people who are on mission are needed. You know, there are opportunities all around us, and it really it happens. It starts to happen in an incredible way in us, that God works through us to accomplish His mission when we say yes. When we start to work for Him in His kingdom. And in your notes, if you're writing these things down, the next thing I'd love to have you write down is that God works through those who work. We want to see God work through us. I think all of us want to see God do something in our life and through our life, but it doesn't usually happen until we say yes. Until we allow Him to work. And when we work, He works. And as we work, He works in and through us. But we have to say yes. Do you remember middle school? And I know some of you are trying to forget, pimples and peer pressure and all of the stuff that comes with that. But do you remember middle school? Do you remember occasionally the love letter that would get slid across the desk, and maybe you were passing it to someone else, or maybe it landed on your desk and it was from, the girl a few rows back, and it said, will you go out with me? Circle yes, or no, or maybe. You remember that? It's a great thing. You sit there and look at what do I do, what do I write? Yes, no, maybe. And when you say yes to God, you circle yes, and He gives you an opportunity in those important moments. Like Paul and Barnabas said yes, and there was someone in need, and they said yes, and they went down that road, and then the glory came to them, and they said no to that. It's not about us. We're not the mission. It's not about us. It's about the King. It's about His kingdom, and we're on mission for the King. And they said yes, and God brought some incredible things into their lives. And I was just kind of thinking through some of the amazing things that God does when we say yes to Him. When we say yes to His kingdom. I think about my own life, and it's kind of like a domino. When you say yes, it's like a domino that's knocked over. You ever stack up the dominoes on Grandma's table, and they just one knocks over the other, and the other, and the other. And I think some of the dominoes that fall when we say yes to God is there's this growth in our own personal lives. There's spiritual growth. In fact, we talked about this a little last week, and how it keeps us on track. I heard one person say years ago, if you're not serving, you're probably swerving. Because it keeps the fire hot in our hearts. It keeps us humble. It keeps us selfless. Because when we become the mission, we become self-centered. It's all about us. My days, my agenda, my time, my resources, my stuff, my everything, it's all centered on me and what I want, what I feel like. But when you serve, you humble yourself, and it has to be about somebody else. And the simple act of giving some of your time and your energy towards God's kingdom for His purposes and for another life, that does something inside you that we just can't even explain. It's kind of the mystery of God, but it shapes you. And it really tips over that domino of spiritual growth. But another thing that does is it brings relationships into our lives. Now, some of my best friends are people that I serve with. And as you lock arms with others, and man, I was just kneeling just this morning with a group of others who were here to serve, and we just knelt together and said, hey, let's kneel, pray. We're praying for you, we're praying for what God's doing here today. And just, man, as you lock arms with others, it's awesome to see the relationships that are formed. And really, that's how you grow and how you connect. We get really easily consumed in our own busyness, and we go, and we don't make time to break for relationship. Because we're always hitting the accelerator. But how you build a life is when you break and you connect with each other and you build relationships. And that happens so smoothly through serving. And then I thought of another thing that I really think is one of God's greatest gifts and blessings to us when we are on mission. When we're on mission for the King and His kingdom, is it allows our lives to have a legacy. You know, there's a lot of things we can do with our time that are good, and maybe even important. But there's few things that will be remembered when we're gone. You know, when they get up at all of our funerals one day, and you know, there's someone that's talking about our life or reading our obituary, there's a lot of things that they won't say. You know? And that list will be long and extensive, and if you let your mind roll for a few minutes, you can think of a lot of things that you can get wrapped up in your time, and you're like, yeah, they probably won't mention that at my funeral. It's not really significant. But then there's some things that will be mentioned as people are standing around at maybe the reception afterward, or standing on the lawn as they lower your remains into the ground. And it'll be that guy that's standing there and is like, man, I'm here because God impacted my life through that lady. And she really imprinted my soul. Because of the words she said, the time she spent with me, those listening ears, I mean, it really impacted me. When I was a kid, maybe that guy, man, he really said some words that impacted me. We had some conversations, and there were some times I was going through hard stuff, and he sat down with me, and maybe he was a leader, a group leader of mine, or a neighbor of mine, or a friend, and then he spent some time mentoring me, and it changed me. Those are the things that will be remembered. And serving and being on mission brings a legacy into our lives and allows our lives to matter. Because success is pretty elusive as the world defines it, and it comes and goes. It's pretty fickle. But success in the kingdom is about putting the Lord's agenda ahead of our own agenda, and it's lasting. And so I challenge you, just start serving. Just start serving. Step up and serve. Now, when people come into church experience, we're new, we're 8 months into this thing, and a lot of people come in new, and some people come in and they're ready to serve. But some people are ready to lead, and they want to lead from day one, and they say, let me lead something, I want to be in charge of something. Now, if that were to happen, we know that someone's probably not quite ready to lead here. Because what I've learned about leading and making a difference, because I think the heart behind that is usually to want to make a big difference. The heart behind that is good a lot of times, but what I see in the kingdom is that leadership is serving. And for those who want to make a great impact in their life, it's inverted compared to how the world views a great impact in their life. It's becoming the least. You know, let me unpack that, but let me first read Jesus' words. This is right from his own lips in Matthew chapter 23, verse 11. Jesus said this. He says, "The greatest among you will be your servant." Let me read that again, because it's short, but it's really potent words, isn't it? It says, "The greatest among you will be your servant." That means someone who is ready to lead is someone who's willing to follow. Because the best followers make the greatest leaders. Someone who's willing to serve others and put others ahead of themselves. And willing to do that out of the spotlight, behind the scenes, menial tasks, the hard work, the labor of helping another life and doing something that might seem insignificant because they're so bought into the mission and so bought into the vision. Like our mission here is pretty clear, church experience. You know, we're trying to extend the movement of what God started so long ago and trying to help more people experience life in Jesus Christ. And so that takes an army of people who are committed to the mission, doing things that are not always seemingly in their own best interest in the moment, making sacrifices, serving the King and his kingdom. And as we all do that, as we all play our roles, God somehow is in that, and he mixes up that recipe, and he does something incredible through us as a unit, as we serve. But we have to be willing to follow. If we want to do something great for God, we have to humble ourselves like Jesus did. He lived this out. And he served. And so are you willing to serve in even simple ways that are not recognized? That you do it just for, if only the king noticed, if no one else noticed your sacrifice, if no one else noticed what you did, would you be willing to serve others? Those opportunities will come up, I guarantee it. In Luke chapter 16, verse 10, one more thought on this. Jesus also said, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much." So are we being faithful with the small moments that God puts into our lives, those small opportunities that seem small? Because if we're not faithful in those moments, if we're not willing to serve in those moments, if we're not willing to humble ourselves and put another first in those quiet moments, then God is not freed up to like he would otherwise be to use us in very important moments. And Paul and Barnabas, their hearts were in the right place, and so God was able to use them in in this miraculous way. And then when the spotlight, it shined on them, and when they were out doing something in front of this group of people, and they're healing this guy, and all the attention say, hey, you guys are like gods. What do? It says they tore their clothes and they ran out and they say, we are no one special. We are just like you guys. It's the King that did this, and it's for his kingdom. So don't worship us. There's nothing special about us. They were faithful in those moments just with Jesus. And so he gave them opportunities to do even greater things. And some of us in the room, we want God to use us greatly. Well, sharpen your sword, strengthen your arms. And why would not God, when your heart is ready, why would he not use you in a great way? My friend in college, his dad owned a hotel in Mexico. And it was right on the ocean. It was just beautiful property right on the ocean. He had a large staff that worked for him, and one of the guys that worked for him was a very popular guy who was a lifeguard. And this lifeguard, although he was very popular, had some character flaws, and he just did not train, was lazy, and he never put his work ethic into it. He just had a very, very bad work ethic. And so he got fired from his job. And my roommate's dad was very unpopular for firing this guy. But he was a lifeguard, and he knew that if he was not trained and if he was not strong and not prepared, when there were storms would come in and there was danger, that he would not be ready to do his job. This guy went down the street, as my roommate told me, and he got a job at another hotel doing the same gig. Months later, front page of the newspaper. Apparently, a big storm had come in, there was huge surf, and someone was out drowning in the waves. And the lifeguards were supposed to, of course, rush out and save them. Well, this particular guy was on duty, and because he was lazy, because he was not strong enough, because he was not trained and was not ready, he went out to save this person and had to turn back because the surf was too big and he could not fight through it to help this person who was drowning. That person drowned. The whole story made the front page of the paper. My roommate's dad walks into his staff, who he was unpopular with for firing this guy, and just simply put the paper on the table in the break room. You know, if we're not ready for those moments, if we're not willing to serve, if we're not willing to work, then we can't expect God to really work greatly through us. See, I think we want great results without great effort. And I don't really see how that works. Jesus gave everything. He gave his life. And he said, if you want to follow me, you have to be willing to take up your cross, which that means dying to certain things that you might otherwise pursue. And dying looks different for each person. It might be dying to some selfish dreams and some selfish ambition, which will actually be good for you. It might be making some sacrifices with our time. And it's different for every person, but dying to ourselves so that God can get more glory. God works through those who work. You know, one of the ways we work is through prayer. It's praying and advancing God's kingdom. And I can't fully explain it, to be honest with you, and sometimes I'll say this in my prayer. I think I just said it this week when I was praying at one point. I was like, God, in your ministry, I don't even know how you do this, but somehow I believe in faith that you work when we pray, and you fight for us. And so I brought my request before him, and I say, God, here's the needs. And so I'm just praying that in these situations that, God, you will work in these lives and do these things. And I just trust that he's at work in ways I can't fully understand, but we work through prayer. We battle through prayer. We work through sharing our story and investing our lives in other people, especially people who've yet to experience the joy and the hope that we have in Jesus. One man of God named Dieter Zander said, we need to talk to God about people, and then we need to talk to people about God. We need to talk to God about people, and our hearts should break in prayer for those who have yet to experience Him, and then we need to talk to them about God. You know, for those of you who have children around you, that doesn't mean they have to be your children, but you're around children. You have responsibility over children. It's a gift from God to invest your life in those young lives and to train them up spiritually. And that's a ministry. That's a very important role. And sometimes children get neglected because parents are about their own agenda. And it's hard to set down their own agenda to focus on the kids because they're noisy or they make messes or they're loud, but that's a gift that God's entrusted you. If you're around kids, whether it's through your occupation, your family, your extended family, your neighborhood, like those children in a sense have been entrusted to you. And so taking time out to do things to serve them makes an impact. Andy Stanley was quoted as saying, your greatest contribution to the kingdom of God may not be something you do, but someone you raise. And that might not even be your own kids, but the next generation, helping to raise them up. And we can all do something in that. And it might be a Bible story at bedtime, teaching them about Jesus, or praying with them or over them. Because if you're not praying for your family, who else is going to pray for them? I mean, if you're not in their corner praying for them, who are you expecting to do that? And if you really believe that makes an impact. Teaching them life lessons, disciplining them, the hard work of disciplining them, which is not always fun or easy. Giving them love and quality time, protecting them from bad media, bad influences, being invested enough that you know what's going on and coming in and out of their lives, providing great environments for them, bringing them to a great environment such as Kid Experience. And that's an impacting environment. As we work, God works. And we work through prayer, we work through investing our lives in others. And as we take the diligent time to invest in others, God gets glory, His kingdom goes on, and it brings fulfillment into our lives. The next thing, if you'd like to write this down, is this, is give more than you take. Give more than you take. You know, in a conversation, are you there to advance your own agenda? Or are you there to listen to God's agenda, what He's doing? Because I believe God's at work in every life. Every person we talk to, I think God is at work in their life. And we just don't always see it because sometimes we're caught in our own agenda. So will we listen and will we be available for God to work through us in every conversation? Give more than you take. And I think give more than you take has implications for all of us in every relationship and every day of our lives. Give more than you take. Give more than you take. I got set up one time without even realizing it. I had a friend, who's maybe more of an acquaintance friend, that invited me years ago. He invited me out to a meal, and our wives were with us, our kids were playing, and we sat down together and we're talking. I thought that he valued the friendship and just wanted to spend some time hanging out. So I said, yes, hey, let's get together. And so we got together and we were talking, hey, how's the family, things like that. A few minutes into it, he pulled something out of a bag he brought in with him, and it was this glossy portfolio. Right? And he starts flipping through the pages, and you can have a house like this, and you can have a car like this, you know, and you can make this much money. And other people have been successful doing this kind of thing and selling these products. And it's to help people. It's a good thing. It's going to save money. It's all these great, and all that was fine for what it was. But for me, I felt like that friendship became a transactional relationship. That the only reason I was there was for something to be taken from me. And it wasn't packaged that way, but it felt that way. And sometimes the perception can be reality, at least for that individual. It felt to me like the friendship was being leveraged to get something from me. And God wants something for us more than He wants something from us. And when I say give more than you take, and we think about sharing our faith with others and expressing God's kingdom and love to others and serving others, we're here to share what God's done in us. We're not here to sell anyone anything. We trained the team. We had a living room full of us a little over a year ago that were going out and trying to begin this movement of church experience and do the work that God had called us to do here and begin this new church. And we said as we went out into the parks to meet a few new people and to get this thing, we said, hey, we don't have to sell anybody anything. So as you're talking to people, don't try to convince them of anything. Like, just love them and just listen. And let's just serve. And that's how it began, and I think that's the heartbeat of church experience, and one of the things I love about it, and I love being here every Sunday. It's just such a highlight of my week every week, because I just feel that when I'm here, that people are not here for themselves. They're here for others. It's not an inward focus, it's an outward focus. It's here to love others and help other people know, even though we're a room full of imperfect people, and we have a perfect love, God's love that flows through our imperfections, and we're just here to serve. We're here to share our story. What God's done in and through us. You know, it's simple to share your story. I had a friend I knew named Scott. He was actually, when I was in high school, he was my youth choir director. We stayed in touch for a little while. And Scott, he had a story that he told us I just thought was hilarious. He was in college, and they were in this traveling choir group. And they would go around from city to city, and they would sing in different places. They do a performance, and it was a Christian group, it was a Christian college, and so between their songs, they would have different college students get up, like Scott, and they would get up and they'd share their story. They'd come up and they'd say, hey, my name's Scott, this is my story, this is how God changed my life, this is what He's done, and they just take a few minutes in the program and share their story. Well, Scott, he's a funny guy. I mean, he just got this great sense of humor, and Scott told me the story about how one time they had been on this tour for many days, and all of them had memorized every part of the performance, not just the songs that they were required to know, but all the transitions in between, all the different people sharing. They knew every word of it because they'd heard it so many times, including every other person's story who would get up and share. Scott, being the funny guy that he was, he got up to share his part in front of the crowd that was gathered in this concert that they were doing, and he got up to share his story about how God had changed his life, but he decided last minute, instead of sharing his own story, that he was going to share Tom's story, who was right behind him. Right? So he gets up, and Scott shares verbatim, word for word, the story of the next guy. Now, can you imagine being the next guy? It's like, he's up there sharing your story, yet you have to go up next. And what are you going to say? You're speechless. And, our stories are unique to us. And someone else could share our story for us, but only you can share your story. No one else has experienced God in the way that you have. And you've seen him work in your family. You've seen him work in your life. You've seen him forgive you of your past. You've seen him work in your life. And no one can share that story quite like you can. And they can talk about you, but no one can share it quite like you can because you've walked that road. And so if you've had some significant loss in your life, let God turn that to good and share that with someone else who's going through loss. If you've seen God change your life in significant ways, then come along some others who need to experience God in that way. If you've seen God's goodness or blessing or kindness, then let those words fall from your lips and let God work through you and give more than you take. When you're in a relationship, share what God has done in your life. Share what he's done in hopes that he will do that in the life of others. But you have to have the mentality of it's not about me, and I'm here to give, not to take. The kingdom, again, we want more for people than we want from people. In Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, it says this. It says, "For it is by grace, God's amazing grace, that you have been saved through faith. And this not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." So it says in verse 10 there at the end, I just read, it says, "For we're God's handiwork, created to do good works." God created us to be about his kingdom and to be about his work in the world. So he wants us to be on mission. He's got work for you to do for his kingdom, and he advances his church, which his church is people, so he advances his work in the lives of others, right? So that's God's work for us, and he has work for you to do, but your work is not the same as your salvation. Your work, what you do for God, is not nearly as important as God's work inside of you. In fact, if you'd like to write this down, this final point in your notes is that God's work inside us is more important than the work we do for him. God's work inside us is more important than the work we do for him. So it is important to be on mission. It's absolutely important to be about God's kingdom. But it's even more important that we understand that God wants to work in us first, that it's really out of the overflow of what God's doing in us that we can even work for him in his kingdom. And that what he does in our life is the only way that really he's going to work through us to work in another life. And going back to what we just read there in Ephesians, it says it is by grace that you've been saved. It's through faith. It's through your faith. It's a relationship with God, that personal relationship through your faith in him. That's how we are changed, and that's how we are saved. It's God's work in us. Hudson Taylor was this amazing missionary, a guy who was on mission, like a modern-day kind of Paul. He lived years ago, and he went into China, and God did some incredible things there in a country that was very close. It still is to some degree, but much less so now than it used to be. And it was very close to Christianity, and it was very much putting your life on the line to go there. And he worked at the China Inland Mission. And he interviewed different missionary applicants that would feel from time to time called to go join him in this work. And he would interview them and he would ask them, "What's your motivation for coming to serve? Like, why are you here?" And some would say it's because Jesus commanded me to go and make disciples of all nations, and I just felt called to be obedient. And that was the motivation for some who would step out and serve. For some, they said, "I want to go and save the millions who are perishing without Jesus." And it was a compassion-driven response. So there's all different kinds of response, from obedience to compassion and all these great reasons. These are good reasons why people responded. Hudson Taylor was quoted as saying this: "All these motives, however good, will fail years." This is from someone who knows. He says, "These will fail years of testings, trials, tribulations, and possible death." So all these motives are good, but that's not strong enough to keep you serving when it gets really hard. It's not strong enough to keep you on mission when you have to die to yourself. And in their case, literally die. He said all these will fall short. He says there's but one motivation that will sustain you in trial and testing. namely the love of Jesus Christ. He says it's that love inside of you, it's that heart for God, that's what changes you. That's what really motivates you and keeps that fire hot inside you to serve the Lord. And that love between us and God is really stoked by His love that is poured into our lives. 1 John 4:19. It says, we love because He first loved us. And so that's how we can love, is because God first loved us and He forgave us our sins. It says in Romans, while we were in our sin, He came and He sent His own Son to die for you and me. We put His Son to death and He still loved us. And while we were in our sin, He loved us. And He loved first, and so we respond. And so why do we serve? Why would we be on mission? Why would we, like Paul, give of our lives to advancing the King's agenda and advancing His kingdom into the lives of others? Why would we do something so crazy? It's because He first loved us. And as you develop that relationship with God and you come to love Him, you come to love what He loves. And what He loves is people. And He wants to reconcile Himself to people whose hearts are cold. He wants to turn them warm, and lives are broken. He wants to heal them, and people who've lost hope, He wants to bring hope into their life. And people who are purposeless, He wants to give them a vision. I mean, those who are lonely, He wants to bring them companionship. And those who are lost in sin, He wants to bring forgiveness. I mean, this is what God wants to do. It's His work. It's His kingdom. And as you grow to love Him, you grow to love His mission. You say, God, I love You so much that I want to be about what You're about. And I want to see the world through Your eyes. And I want my heart to be with Your heart. The final verse I'm going to read today is from, again, in Ephesians chapter 2, a little bit earlier on in the chapter, verse 3. Ephesians 2, verse 3, it says, all of us lived among them, those who are spiritually lost. We all lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh, following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. But because of His great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive. He made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. Man, it's by grace that we were saved. It's by God's grace. And that's just set our heart on fire. That without Him, we were dead. And this limited life that we have, it was headed nowhere. And God came and He filled our lives with new life. And He brought hope, and He brought joy and peace and all this. I mean, that's incredible. And there's nothing better than that in this world. There's nothing that can top that. And that's the love of God poured into our lives. His goodness poured out into us. One person said the most powerful weapon on earth is the human soul on fire. If you set yourself on fire for God, man, He's going to work through you. He's going to touch other lives. It's going to pour out. So invest your time with Him, with the King. Get alone before Him. Fall in love with Him again and understand how much He loves you and how much He cares for you and how important you are to Him. And then when your heart starts beating with His, you'll start to realize how that same love He has for you, He has for the world around us. And He wants to bring His compassion and His love into this world through us as we are on mission. So here's the question. Will you make yourself available? Not just in the important moments, but in every moment. Will you make yourself available to the King? Will you avail yourself to His agenda? Will you start seeing the world through His eyes? And I think if you'll go on this thrill ride with us, you'll make yourself available to God and you say, God, I'm here to serve You in any way that You want to use me. God, I want to be a part of what You're doing. Man, He's gonna light up your life. It's not without hardship. I mean, read Acts. And it was with hardship. I mean, I see a joy between the pages of what they went through. I see an adventure. I see a thrill ride that I don't want to miss out on. I'm giving my life to follow the King and to advance His kingdom because He loved me. And I can do nothing else but to love Him back and advance His agenda in the world because of who He is and what He's done. Right on? Come on, let's pray together. Father, I thank You so much that You love us so deeply. You love us so well. That God, although we were spiritually lost and far from You, that You reached out a hand to us and You pulled us up out of the pit. And God, You put joy in our heart. You brought forgiveness. You brought this freshness, God, into our lives. Your Spirit, God, You brought it into our lives. And God, we're just so grateful for that. I'm so thankful for Your companionship and Your friendship, and You're my King, and that I follow You and I honor You and I live for You. I'm so grateful that You're my Father, that You love me with an unconditional love. It's not based on my performance or my work or how well I do, but God, it's based on who I am, that You love me with my flaws and all, God, that You love me. And that's true for each one sitting here. regardless of the past that are represented in this room. I pray that those who are here today would understand that, God, your love surpasses their failure. That, God, your love is so great. And would you just pour that into us today? Those who just need that to be uplifted today, they just need to walk away knowing that, God, that you're there and that you care and that you're with us. Your presence is here. We're not alone. And we're so grateful for that. And God, it's out of all of that, it's out of that heartbeat, it's out of that love, it's out of that companionship and relationship with you that, God, we go serve. And we go advance your agenda and your kingdom in this world and in the lives of others. And God, we're so grateful to do it. Sometimes it may be unrecognized, and sometimes it may be difficult, and sometimes it may require more than us than we think is able we have to give. But God, somehow you work through our willingness. When we work, you work, God. When we become givers and not takers, God, you multiply the impact in our lives. It brings fulfillment. It brings friendship. God, it brings so much into our lives. We grow spiritually. And I want that for each person, and I pray that we would become more mission-minded. We'd be on mission for you. And that, God, we just see some incredible stuff. Your work was not reserved for this time 2,000 years ago as the early church was launched. God, you're at work. Your Spirit's at work just as much so here now and today. And we want to see you use us, God. So we're making ourselves available. Please work through us as we work and advance your kingdom through us. It's in Jesus' powerful name we pray. And everyone said, Amen.
We hope you got a lot out of today's teaching. Remember, if you would like to learn more, get connected, or begin to give, click on the appropriate links on the website. Thanks for stopping by online, and we hope to see you in person really soon.